How do universal constants and everything else surrounding cosmology affect Soul Calibur, Part 3? Hey, what's up guys, as I'm Yoon, and today I bring another hopefully exciting video. So this is actually part 3 of our 3-part series this week, where we were talking about the different scientific anomalies that happen within like causation, talking about like parallel universes, multiverses, timelines, dimensions, and how they ascertain and pertain to Soul Calibur and its universe. And we went over a lot of stuff, and it's probably super confusing, so I want to talk about directly how timelines affect Soul Calibur from Soul Calibur 6 going forward, and obviously we can open the conversation up in the comment section and on Discord to debate or discuss it, but this is how it relates to my opinion of how it's happening, so this is how I see it going. We talked about a little bit about restructuring of genetic sequences in DNA in the first video, where we're talking about how, like, even if Sophia has children with the same person in this timeline, it's going to be completely different, not Pyrrha and Patroclus, based on the fact that their genetic structures are actually mixing. So the different activations of different genetic markers and coding are going to turn them into completely different people. Just like you and your brothers and sisters are completely different from one another, even though you come from the same genetic structure, and you and your cousins are even further separated, even though you have a common base root of ancestry, so on and so forth. This is how that works. So starting with that and branching into other things, we can have, before we get to decision making, the kids are going to be different just based on the fact that there's different decision making going on, and their parents are genetically different based on just the universe and timeline that they're in. This could be whether Sophia that day decided to have a sandwich or have a salad. This can change her decision making for the rest of her day, which will lead to another universe being created or another timeline being created of decisions that she did, yes, no, maybe made. And this would branch off into other hypotheses that would go into infinitum and would be nauseatingly difficult to explain. So they could go the easy route. In fiction, there's a lot of times where you'll see kids being born, and in another timeline those kids are still born. Now scientifically this doesn't make sense at all. There's no way that would actually recombine to be anything similar to what it was, just like you and your brothers and sisters are not the same. Even if you're twins, genetically twins, you still have genetic markers that are active or not active. Let's say, for example, you have a twin and your twin has asthma, but you do not. Different genetic markers and different ancestral vestiges were actually activated or not activated when the process of you forming, which means that even though you're pretty similar in DNA sequences, I mean, DNA is crazy as the genetic markers make such a different distance. Like, for example, humans and chimpanzees share 97% DNA. There's only a little 3% difference that separates us from them. And even though we're ancestral linked, everything that happened that branched from that tree really changed things and made things a lot different. And that's the same thing that comes to Soul Calibur when it happens to kids. That's the easiest way that I can describe it. They're either going to go the scientifically accurate route, where if they have kids they're completely different, and that's the route that I think they're taking because they want to change everything that happened in 5, and that's just based on marketing and sales and investors not wanting to go the same route, because Soul Calibur 5 was the worst selling Soul Calibur game of all time and caused the reboot to begin with. They wanted to write things completely differently because they wrote themselves into a corner when it came to Algol. And they want to write him in differently this time. Whether it is the original Algol or this universe's interpretation of Algol is completely different. So they can go that route, or they can go the easy route, which means they actually do have Patroclus and Pyrrha being born into this timeline, but they actually just effectively are different personality-wise, which means they'll be able to rewrite them based on how they would serve the story better, as opposed to just making them exact replicas of their past timeline selves. Whether this means that they use the same fighting styles and it's recycled, or they have completely new weapons, is a totally different story, but those are the only 2 options that they really have. Well, there is a third option too. The third option is Sophia doesn't have kids. Maybe she gets killed off and Cassandra takes over for her, and she just doesn't have kids, period. That's also a possibility. I'm not saying it's a probability. I can't really structure how accurate that would be statistically speaking, but from my opinion, she'll probably have kids. They might even be named Patroclus and Pyrrha. They might be named Dwaka Leon or whatever, like that Cassandra was naming, and then whoever else the next kin is. And they may look exactly alike. They may look completely different. It's up to the new art team and writers, pretty much. Like, they have free reign. Investors just don't want them covering their last tracks. And as many fans that Pyrrha and Patroclus has, more people don't like them than do like them, so that definitely affects like how they're going to write the story. Knowing that you're coming from the worst selling game, they're not going to replicate that again. They're going to try and stay as far away from everything that happened in there as possible. Whether that means replacing the current characters with new, lesser versions of themselves, whether that means focusing on Sophitia's children as opposed to another character, whether that means they introduce new characters alongside of our favorites that actually act within the story with the characters instead of replacing them, similar to how Grow does. Those are all questions that are going to be answered in Soul Calibur 7. But relating to how it happens and what timeline events happen, that's just correlated differently. So we know that like the kids might or might not be the same, but the same thing goes for actions. So let's say in this timeline, like Raphael is malfested again, and but instead of getting vampire traits, he's just regularly malfested. But then like Amy becomes Viola and infiltrates the Swords and Shepherds, and Raphael finds out they end up fighting. One of them dies, or like maybe they come out of it. Those would all change future timelines. So there's like there's an infinite amount of stuff. This is why, like I was saying before when I was talking to people, whether it's a Solomel betrayed everyone before or did his own thing and transformed and was the main bad guy like of Soul Calibur 3, that's not going to happen here. They're going to do things differently based on what they want and how they want to help the story. So I know a lot of this is really super confusing, and I apologize for it. I try to make it as easy to digest as possible. And again, most of this is just my interpretation of it. I'm sure you guys have different interpretations of the same thing. These 3 videos just correlates to the phrase, I hope they write it better, or I hope they keep writing it well. Because there's even some things from Soul Calibur 2 that Soul Calibur 6 Season 2 that happened that weren't exactly like explained properly. Like if this is a different timeline entirely, then how come Algol is a disembodied voice that may be the same Algol that happened in the past? Because we know that Algol as himself is not a universal character. He was at one point a human, known as the Hero King. So if that person existed in this timeline, what happened to that variation of Algol? Is this timeline's version of Algol? Is it the last timeline's version of Algol? Is this like the essence of Algol from the last timeline that he didn't transform or turn into Algol in this timeline, and therein lies exists that? Is he tied to the astral chaos now? There's like so many questions that they wrote about that doesn't make sense when it comes to timelines, unless they're talking about like multiversal or omniversal string theory type things. So hopefully they get a little bit their science writing down better, because I know a lot of people don't really care, but I don't really care either, even though I understand it probably a little bit better than most. But I just like don't want to fixate on the details. I don't want to miss the forest for the trees kind of thing. I just want them to tell a good story with good characters, and hopefully their writing is as top notch when it comes to narrative like they did from Season 2, and that continues on. But let me know your thoughts in the comment section down below, guys, and thank you for putting up with these convoluted, messy videos this week. But if you liked them, please subscribe. I try to do as best servicing not only myself but the people that watch me as possible, and I try to get everyone's opinions out there. That's why I talk about other people's opinions and contrasting opinions constantly. But any and all thoughts are always welcome in the comment section down below. If you subscribe to the channel, that would really help me out a lot and really make my day. Any and all thoughts on Discord are always welcome, and if you would like to help support the channel, you can hit the join button and join the Yoon-Fam, and that'll give you access to a bunch of different perks. So with that being said, guys, we're going to bring this video to a close. Thank you guys for watching and liking and all that good stuff. And as I always say, I love it. Thank you.
and thank you.